Greetings. Welcome to a new episode of Art Matters. I'm your host, Wayne Quackenbush. And today we're going to do one of our extended interviews with only one artist, one creator, a multidisciplined person who I will introduce shortly. But this is a timeless show, but we're actually taping in the middle of October, and everybody enjoys the change in season, and they enjoy the imminent arrival of Halloween or Samhain or however you want to celebrate it. And we're one of the many talents that our current interviewee has is lots of different psychic training and abilities. So welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Wayne. I'm really thrilled to be here. I appreciate you inviting me.
This is a long time coming. We've known each other for quite a while.
Yes.
I mean, you said that you used to visit back when your child was younger, your son was younger, and
Yes.
But we've worked together on various different things. We keep traveling in the same circles.
Yes.
The psychic community of Rhode Island and Aquidneck Island especially. We know lots of different people in that community, but we need to have you talk for a while. So let's talk about how your life journey and how you kind of arrived to where you are and the different things that have happened.
Wow, well, that's a rabbit hole.
Well, you were born at a young age, right?
I was born at a young age. I was, yes, at a very young age. So I was born in Newport, Rhode Island, and my grandparents are longtime Newporters. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was actually the high sheriff in Newport for many years.
I didn't even know we had a high sheriff.
We do.
Oh, okay.
Still, I think, to this day.
See, I'm learning something from you today, too.
Yes, yeah. And so I enjoyed a lot of time in Newport as a kid, but my parents had moved to Portsmouth to my mother's parents' house on Willow Lane. And a lot of local sort of old-time Portsmouth people would know my grandmother's parents because my grandparents had a junkyard, a salvage yard. So everybody knew Arthur Souza's salvage yard. And so I had like the best of both worlds on the island. And I mean, it was kind of an ordinary growing up for the most part, except my grandmother, my mother's mother, when all the babies were born in our family, she would crank open the mouth and look for a symbol on the roof of the mouth.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
Yeah. And it was to see if the baby had intuitive or psychic abilities. And so I have the mark, and my older brother has the mark. And out of 5 kids, the 2 of us have it's a horseshoe with a line down the middle.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's something that my grandmother learned, I guess, from our culture. Or we're primarily Portuguese, and so I grew up knowing I was psychic, but
didn't that kind of predicate you into moving in that direction too?
It did, yes, but for a while I moved away from that direction, and which was actually a good thing in the end. I didn't, at the time when I was going through that, I didn't think it was a good thing, and I'll just touch base a little bit about that in a minute. So my grandmother did this work, but she would never teach me. But what she did teach me or give to me was a really good, strong foundation and belief that we have the unseen world all around us there to help us. And so that has been a very important foundation for me, because when big things happen in our lives, we're human beings. If we have something, a belief, whatever that is, that we have this unseen help on the other side, then it can make a huge difference in how you get through those things.
Sure.
And so she taught me about angels and saints and all that sort of thing. And
now, did she have a Catholic foundation, or
She did. Well, yep. We grew up. My dad's side was St. Mary's Church in Newport, and where the Kennedys got married.
yeah.
My grandmother's family. She was originally from Middletown. They started Jesus Savior, and then when my mother's parents moved out here, it was St. Anthony's. And but she was not religious, so it wasn't church every Sunday, that kind of thing. So it was different because it wasn't religious teaching. It was more of a spiritual teaching and a belief that we have all these wonderful beings out there that can help us.
Wouldn't that be some kind of a folk tradition that she's evoking? I mean, because the baby symbol in the mouth doesn't come from Catholicism.
No. Right. A lot of Catholicism comes from different.
No,
started
of course.
in different, yeah.
But then,
areas.
of course, there's the beliefs that people had that passed down from generation to generation, and some of them may have predated Christianity.
Yes.
Possibly.
Yes.
And then, of course, there's always reinterpretations of.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
It's the Catholic religion is endlessly fascinated. I was raised a white bread, very Protestant and austere.
Yeah.
No saints.
Yes.
None of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, more in the Catholic Church, we have that.
Of course.
Yeah,
And it's you pray to the saints. You invoke. You ask for help.
Yes.
They're intercessors beyond the priest.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm interrupting you, but go ahead.
Yeah. No, I love it because it's one of my best friends in school was a Protestant, and I had no idea there was anything other than Catholic until I was 12 years old. And I said, a Protestant? What is that?
Yeah.
You know, and since then I've gone, to look at all sorts of spiritual teachings and different religions and Buddhism and many different things. And
Did you start that back in the hippie days? Because
well,
a lot of people. I mean, I remember reading Carlos Castaneda and all that stuff.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Carlos and Rumi and my book collection is very extensive.
Yeah, I mean, you're so knowledgeable. I don't even think we're going to have enough time to cover everything we need to cover.
Yeah, probably not. So I'll let you lead me where you'd like to go.
I mean, you could do a rundown of all of the training that you've had, and that'll ground everything, and then we can start looking at your projects, your creative projects, and your artwork, and you can touch on everything from regressive, what is it,
past life regression,
past life regression to sewing.
Okay, great.
So you could start with that.
Okay, great. Talking about sort of my training, my early training, again, with my grandmother, would have been the foundational stuff, the belief that there's something bigger than us. And even though, like I said, she was doing this work, she wouldn't teach me how to do the work because she said I was too young. And then
I mean, it's powerful stuff, right? And
yes.
And you don't want to mess with it if you can't face what the consequences might be, because there's always consequences.
100%, because just like in any profession out there are different levels of things, and there's light and there's shadow. There's light and there's dark, and that's the stuff that she didn't want me to encounter at that younger age.
Yeah.
And but interesting, she didn't know that I had the mediumship ability. None of us did, until I was sitting in her kitchen one afternoon, and I went into a spontaneous trance and channeled her teacher in the spiritual, world,
wow.
and the esoterics, and delivered a 40-minute message to my grandmother, and had no idea when I came out of it what I said, only that I knew T.L. Dina was there. And I grew up with T.L. Dina. We used to go to her. She had a mansion in Fall River, which I would love to know. I can't remember where it was, but I remember we would go to the mansion, and my grandmother and she would go in the office and do their work. And then, I wasn't scared because I was very familiar with her. I knew her growing up. But and I was curious as to, well, what was the message? And my grandmother said, the message is for me, and I can't share it with you. And I never to this day know what the message is. So it did freak me out a little bit because I had no control. And
I didn't want to take you to the doctor, like maybe you were having some kind of epileptic
No, because my grandmother knew this world, fortunately.
But she was the only one that was a witness to this?
She was.
Okay.
She was. And when a message is that personal or private, then it will come like that.
And you lost time. Were you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of it until I came out of it. Yeah. And then I was like, oh my God, that was like 40 minutes ago. Yeah. So I was not aware of it. I was completely out of consciousness and conscious awareness. And so I was like, I'm not doing that again.
Well, it wasn't like you had any control over it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then sort of, kind of try to speed the timeline up a little bit. I was seeing a tarot card reader that my grandmother and my aunt were both seeing. At this point, I had gotten married. About a year into the marriage, realized some things that my husband was doing that I did not really agree with. And I went to find counsel. And I didn't know that not everyone is sort of at the level of Beethoven or Van Gogh.
You mean as far as counseling? Or?
As far as esoterics, whether it's card reading or psychic messages, or because we read through the lens of our own life.
Right. So you're limited by your talents and abilities.
By your own perspectives, actually, and
but when you say Beethoven, or is that some kind of higher level thing?
Exactly.
Okay.
So they, like Beethoven, Bach, Van Gogh, they all practice to become to the point of virtuoso, right? And so
any esoteric teaching, you're different levels of ability anyway.
Right.
But some people can't go further.
Exactly, because you don't have the archetypes for that, or the astrology chart, or we could go down deep into this,
or even the mental architecture,
or the mental architecture. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not everybody's life purpose. It's not everybody's purpose to do what I do. It's not, if otherwise we wouldn't have artists and construction people and, all the brilliant things that we have available to us.
A different set of skills. And
Right, absolutely. So what I learned from that woman, it actually drove me away from doing the work for a long time, but what it drove me to was study and studying ethics and wanting to be the best that I could be at this, because it really twisted my life up for quite a few years. The direction that this woman gave me and what she was telling me, and which was, none of it was true. By the way.
Wait, are you talking about, you're not talking about...
The card reader.
Oh, the
tarot card reader.
Yeah.
None of it was true. None of it that she said was true, but I didn't know that, and I hinged every word on it.
I mean, I've had experiences even with some of the people that we may even know, where people, they're some of them are, let's just be honest and say, grifters.
Yes, 100%. And so part of my mission I took on along my timeline was, if I was going to do this work, I really needed to be helping people in a positive way.
Right.
And helping people to understand about not giving their power away, where you go to somebody and you look for advice, you don't all of a sudden just dive in 100%. You have to filter it through your understanding and if it feels right for you or not, right? So that became a big part of my mission. And so I started studying with some fabulous teachers. Have been really lucky to have some really great teachers come into my life, and also it's interesting, at that time I had healing work come into my life as well. I was introduced to an original American chief from upstate New York, Native American chief, and he would come down to Providence and he would take students and teach healing work. So I started learning healing work from him. And then that sort of continued. Then I worked with a Celtic shaman who was trained in a school in Maine. I forget the name of the school, but I studied with him for a while. I went on to study Reiki because by that time, I was working at the post office, which was a very totally
It's a different lifestyle.
totally different lifestyle.
But
And-
can you give us like a one sentence, two sentence explanation of what Reiki is for people who may not know?
Yeah, so Reiki, so we have in Eastern medicine, we have energy centers called chakras. And the Reiki energy
Those
comes
are along the spine, right?
along the spine. Correct, very good. And there's sort of circles of energy that spin. Everybody has them. It doesn't matter, where you live in the planet. And everybody has them. And so they spin. Sometimes they spin clockwise, sometimes counterclockwise, sometimes they're closed, sometimes they're open. It's normal for them to change their spin to open to close, depending on what's going on in your life. The Reiki energy comes through just one chakra, and that's the heart chakra. And so it's all about love, right? And so there's different hand positions that is part of the training that goes according, you lay the hands on the chakras down the spine.
But not touching.
You can touch or
you
not
can
touch,
touch.
depending how
Okay.
the client feels.
I've seen
Yeah.
it practice, and I've seen it not touching. But
So that's a great point, though, because when you're working outside of the body and you're working in the energy field, you're working on the spiritual level of the person.
it's like running a theremin. You know the instrument that. Anyway, that's a whole other story.
Sorry, we probably need a week together.
We gotta get showing some artwork too.
Yeah. And so when the hands are on the body, you're actually working with the physical body.
Yeah. Okay.
So if the
That's
person,
a big difference.
It is a big difference. Yes. So if the person has physical pain or injuries and things like that, you might want to work on the body, but it might also be a spiritual thing. Where it started in a mindset or a trauma. So you could do either, but both ways work great in conjunction. So I sort of started that, and then one thing led to another, and I've been down a rabbit hole now for 30 plus years with education. I studied with Dr. Brian Weiss in the Weiss Institute and became certified in past life regression. I am a double Reiki master. I am an angel healer, an oracle card, certified oracle card specialist. I've got the trainings would take half an hour to tell you all the trainings I have.
Yeah. I mean,
And I also went to a 3-year healer school, an intensive healer school, which then I learned about talking about Reiki, connecting this in. I learned how to work with all the chakras of the system, so it's a more whole healing system. And so I did that for 3 years as well. And in between all of that, I also it helps when you're learning these things to do something creative. And I've always been creative. My 7th grade art teacher, his name was Mr. Burrows, was the first one to teach me how to sketch. And so that was the year I also learned how to sew.
Can I interrupt you so you can start showing stuff and talking still?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. So I wish I had brought
hold it
more of
Parallel
my.
to
I wish I brought more of
Myris's
my
camera there.
sketches. What do you want me to start with?
Whatever you want to start
Okay,
with.
so we'll go this way. So I just decided one day, I was sitting in my yard, I had an injury, and I wasn't able to do much, so I said, you know what? I'm gonna get some paints out. I sketched the picture first. I actually sketched it when I was in Maine, and then this is in Rockland, Maine. And then I said, I'm gonna take that sketch when I'm sitting at my home in my yard, and I'm gonna paint it. And it was my first watercolor. And then, I think it's pretty good for a first watercolor.
Sure, of course.
Never having any training or anything.
Yeah.
But at that, I was sketching for a long time at that point, off and on. Never really anything consistently. And then I did one for my neighbor from where we lived we lived in Tiverton at the time.
Sure.
And I gave it to him for a birthday present. And he was an art teacher. And he was over the moon about it. He was like, oh my, you're telling me all this and that and the qualities of it. And I'm like, I don't know, I just sketched it and then painted it. So So that was like my first like watercolor piece that I've ever given to anybody or presented. I did a lot of sketches that I just have in a portfolio.
Sure.
And I also designed clothes, which is also artwork in a way, right?
Of course.
And so my latest creation is one of my students is a multi-artist as well. She wrote a children's book, but she's not a sketch artist. And she needed somebody to illustrate it. So she came to me and said, "Can you illustrate the book?" I'm like, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, I can do the characters. I know that. But the rest of it," I said, because the reason why she thought I could do it was I'd been studying AI classes since for about 8 months at that point.
For anybody who doesn't know, artificial intelligence.
Artificial
correct?
intelligence, yes. And that was to help me with my other things that I do, learn how to use Chat GPT and all of that, write newsletters and whatever. So she's persistent. I love her for that. And I said, well, let me check it out and see if I can do it. And so I was able to with the characters that I created and AI produce this children's book. And it's about loss. She's a grief expert, and it's for children to give parents or grandparents or loved ones a way to sort of introduce their children to loss of a pet or a family member or so forth. And so it was fun. It was frustrating. It was all of those things because the big learning in this is learning how to do what's called prompt chaining. And that's talking to the computer because in everyday language, we often leave out things. Like say, for example, if you ask your wife to could you get me a cup of coffee if you're in the middle of something or whatever. Well, your wife knows where the coffee is. She knows where the coffee pot is. She knows where the cup is. AI doesn't know where that is, doesn't know where the coffee pot is or how to find it. So you have to be very specific in the languaging.
But it's not exactly like a programming language because you're using regular English, right?
Regular English,
Yeah.
exactly. So getting the prompting is really the key, and knowing how to speak to it to produce what you're looking for. And so that was the tricky part. And then I also did the layout of the book, which I'd never done before. I love challenges, and going back to
Wait, did you set up the PDFs or whatever?
everything.
Okay.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Did the formatting. Yeah, everything. And going back to the creative part, when I learning such the intensive things with the healing work and all that. It's good to focus on something creative at the same time. If anybody out there is sort of interested in any of this, right?
Well, it's all about connecting with the universe in some way.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because the main character, Sonny Sebastian, I did several iterations of him, and the first iteration that I did looked even though he's a sunflower, his face was Jeannie's husband.
Oh, that's strange.
It was so interesting. And
Jeannie being the author.
Jeannie the author, yes. It was so interesting. And so that's on her refrigerator. And then the real Sonny came out.
What was her reaction when you first started showing these to her?
She was thrilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was thrilled. And then the characters are representative of some family members, all the kids in her family. And this is Gabby Gardenia, and her grandchildren are the dragons. So these are two of the characters in the book.
Are these your actual sketches?
These are, yes.
And you colored them yourself?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
So this is not run through the machine at all?
No. So I like to sketch my work first. And then once I sketch it, then, I let them tell me what they want to bring it to life.
Did you feed that into, I'm not sure how that would work. Would you feed that into scan it and put it into the machine and then talk to the machine about what you wanted the character to do?
So the characters are actually still in the book. I couldn't magic that. I tried all.
They couldn't adapt?
There's not a program for that yet. So I wasn't able to get that accomplished. And technology is moving so quickly. I'm sure that will be available.
I mean, this is far different than somebody using Photoshop, for instance.
Right.
Because there's an interface between you and what comes out that's manipulated by the machine, whereas if you were using Photoshop, you'd be working with different layers of artwork and you'd be changing everything yourself.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so I scanned the characters into the computer and then uploaded them into Canva. And that's when the layers, started coming in.
You tell me what Canva is now.
So Canva is, it's a program that a lot of social media people use. Mm-hmm. You can create everything on Canva, from social media posts to calendars to YouTube banners. You can also create coloring books, right? And
so would that be like the publisher? Or
no,
just a way to put it together?
It's just a way to put it together, sort of like Photoshop. Yeah.
Or if you were using like a service like Shutterfly, maybe, you know what I'm talking about, where they would make a book for you?
They can do that. Mm-hmm. They can make books, they can make T-shirts, whatever you create in the program, mm-hmm. you can then have published, yes.
Yeah.
Like I did a T-shirt for my daughter-in-law for her birthday, and she wanted a Honda Rebel T-shirt, and she couldn't find one, so I created one for her.
Sure.
And just had it, made.
They have no problem with using copyrighted.
Well, I just did Rebel, and then did the motorcycle, so I didn't use their copyrighted material.
Yeah.
Just format it so the Rebel was there. And the writing was in there.
Now, are you having any say as to where the computer is drawing the stuff from, or is that just stuff that comes out of the computer? I mean, the computer, it's already in there.
Great question. So to do the pictures, I used a combination of ChatGPT, mm-hmm. A program called Dolly. And I tried a bunch of different programs, visual programs out there. There's Leonardo, there's lots of them that you can find. I found for this, Dolly was the best for me. Mm. And so I would prompt Dolly.
Like the artist Dolly?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I would put the prompt into the Dolly program and say, create a picture of a tree in the sky with the stars behind it.
Gotcha.
and so forth. But you have to do it in layers.
We have to stop.
Yes.
I didn't think that we would be, wow, this is amazing. But anyway, I appreciate you coming by. Thank you.
Yes.
It was so much fun. I might even have to have you come back because we've only touched on so few things.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks again for tuning in, and we look forward to having you for another episode of Art Matters. I'm Wayne Quackenbush, your host. Bye.